currently beating my meat to some stats.
Hey yo, what the?
This time we got the fighting type, a type that is very strong on the offensive side while also being fairly decent on the defensive side as well. So here we go, 50 useless fighting type stats. As usual, only the regular and regional forms will be in the count, not alternatives or megas, unless stated otherwise. Let's just start. The fighting type on average is the type with the highest attack stat. Removing regional forms from the count, the type that released the least amount of fighting types is Johto, with only 3. The region that released the most amount of fighting type Pokemon is Unova, with a total of 15 fighting type Pokemons. Paldea is the only region to not release a mono fighting type Pokemon. There is a two-way tie for having the highest HP allocation amongst all fighting types. Both of these Pokemon are from the same evolution line. 32 fighting types have over 80 HP. None came from the Johto region. The most common fighting type dual type is fighting and fire, with 6, all of them being starter Pokemons. The most commonly used base stat for fighting types is 570 and 580, both of them being used a total of 5 times. 7 out of 18 of all fighting types that have a base stat of 535 or higher came from the Paldea region. 9 fighting types has a speed stat less than 45. Out of these 9 Pokemons, only Crabominable is dual typed. Out of all 80 fighting type Pokemon, only Lucario and Keldeo has more special attack than attack. All fire fighting dual type Pokemon has their defensive stats equalized. The largest attack gap by a fighting type Pokemon is 95 by Sock. Looking at the top 10 attack allocation by a fighting type Pokemon, only Breloom and Crabominable are dual typed. 42 fighting type has a defense stat of 75 or higher, none came from the Sinnoh region. Formosa has the highest offense score out of all fighting types with 425. Tyrogue and Makuhita are tied for the lowest offense score of a fighting type with 105. Hitmonlee is the only fighting type with a special defense stat more than double its defense stat. Formosa has the largest bulk to offense gap with 280 and is both the best physical sweeper and special sweeper of a fighting type, both at a score of 288. 7 fighting type Pokemon has the sum of their best 3 stat values at 350 or higher. 4 of these Pokemon came from the Paldea region. Tyrogue has the lowest sum of its best 3 stats with only 105. Makuhita has the worst sum of its lowest 3 stats at only 75, while Zamazenta has the highest sum of its worst 3 stats at 287. Formosa has the highest offense allocation of all fighting type Pokemon. Even if its offense allocation would have dropped by 10%, it would still be number 1. 2 fighting types has a bulk allocation of 60% or higher. Both of them came from the Unova region. Alright, halfway done, just letting you guys know my favorite fighting type is Koraidon because it has a phenomenal design, a dragon, and is strong. Rounded to the nearest whole number, 466 is the average base stat for fighting type. Throw and Sock are closest to this amount at 465. Buzzwole is the best fighting type physical tank with a score of 278. Virizion and Keldeo are the best fighting type special tank with a score of 219. These are the average stats for fighting types. Only Flamigo is within 18 points of each of the averages. Likewise, Tyrogue isn't within 23 points of any of the averages. If special stats were removed, Tyrogue would have the lowest base stat at 105 and would also have the lowest stat if physical stats were removed, alongside having the worst bulk and worst offense. If special stats were removed, Koraidon would have the highest base stat at 485. If physical stats were removed, Zamazenta would have the highest base stat at 425. All of Tyrogue's stats are completely equalized and is the only fighting type Pokemon to do this. Keldeo is the only fighting type Pokemon that doesn't allocate at least 1/7 of all of its stats into the attack stat. Formosa, Iron Valiant, and Infernape are the only fighting types to have all 3 of its offensive categories at triple digit. Koraidon is the only fighting type Pokemon to have all its bulk categories at triple digit. 3 fighting type Pokemons allocate 24% or more of all their stats to special defense. All 3 came from the same evolution line. Fighting is the only type super effective against normal, and is tied for having the most amount of super effective advantages at 5. 33 fighting types has over 80 speed. None came from the Hoenn region. 2 Pokemon allocate 55% or more of all their stat within 2 stat categories. Both came from the same evolution line. 4 fighting type has their bulk and offense score equalized. Only Heracross does this with all 6 of its stat categories being different numbers. 35 fighting Pokemon with an offense score of over 250. None came from the Johto region. 30 fighting type Pokemon with a bulk score of 250 or higher. None came from the Sinnoh region. Pomo is both the smallest and lightest dual type fighting Pokemon. 4 fighting type Pokemon has a base stat of 600 or higher. None of them leads the fighting type in any stat category. 60 fighting type Pokemon has over 40 special attack. None of them came from the Johto region. Makuhita has the lowest stat amongst all fighting types for 4 different stat categories. These are the average allocations of stats amongst fighting types. Only Zapdos is within 2 percentage points of each of the allocations. Likewise, only Scrafty isn't within 3 percentage points of any of the average allocations. Yeah, those were 50 useless stats about the fighting type. I got no outro this time, so that's about it.